Hey, hello, and welcome to the 23rd episode of This Week in Mappercraft. I think I'm changing the name to This Week in Mappercraft's History, probably, as the title. Anyway, last week was May 31st to June 6th, and we'll be covering the years of 2016, 2017, 2020, 2022, and 2025. As always, all information can be found on the Mappercraft wiki, which is linked in the description along with the server itself. Let's get into the years. First up, in 2016, the server was running Earthworld 4, hosted by Monsoon Jr. In 2017, the server was running Earthworld 6, hosted by Xenodyne. In 2020, the server was running both Solus World 2 and Hawaii World, hosted by Solus and Vegetable, respectively. In 2022, the server was running Earthworld Redux, hosted by Top. And finally, in 2025, last year, the server was running Brave New World Revisited, hosted by me, MintyMichael. First up, we have 4 events from May 31st to June 6th, 2016 during Earthworld 4. On the second ESD War began, also referred to as the Wrecked War, and Eagle's Landing's final phase for some reason. It started when the Estonian kingdom of Rekistan was declared and immediately went to war with Laurania. The formerly Talon army marched into Havana and destroyed it, but apparently that was not sufficient as they proceeded to attack Vask. According to the quote, the damage was not quite as much as during the Ultimate War of a couple of weeks ago, but it was more uneven, with Laurania taking much more damage than Talon. On the third, it actually had a second phase called the Eagle's Landing Final Run, or the War of Rectus Punishment, where the Rektish army invaded Korea and destroyed the city of Incheon. This would mark the end of Rektish offenses. On the 4th, the Darmian Civil War occurred after Darmia declares war on the Garahensi Jalabrate, and several of their own members defect to the other side in protest. According to the quote, the rebels won easily, with Garahensi remaining independent and the Free Darmian Republic declaring independence from Darmia proper. Also on the 4th, the Aragon War occurred when Armima declared war on Carpustir due to a rumor of their members betraying Laurania. Istra was invaded quickly before the Aragon army moved on to Estonia and started the Battle of Tallinn. Rekistan thus got involved, with FedEx pushing Tomad out of Tallinn and then going on to invade Vask. According to the quote, the war ended when Tomad's griefs of Istra were declared illegal and he was banned for 4 days. This was due to Multi declaring independence from Carpustir before the war began. Following this, on the 5th of June 2016, the Vengeful Era ended and the Post-Vengeful Era began. According to the quote, the world calmed down as the 2 major superpowers emerged, Carpustir, which eventually became Starin, and the Aragon Union, which used to be Armima. Although there will still be more events in the next 2 months, the sort of major climactic period of Earthworld 4 is now over, for the most part. The Vengeful Era is definitely the climactic period of that world's history. But next up, we have an eventful week in 2017 during Earthworld 6. First, on the 31st of May, the Icelandic Compromise was signed when Thunder, the leader of Iceland, accidentally joined Starum. He was formerly allied to Eriga, but he thought that Eriga wasn't around anymore. According to the quote, the Aragon government threatened war, and ultimately Iceland did rejoin Eriga, and Starum gained some land in Scotland as a concession. Also on the 31st, the Marin Declaration was released, which split the PAU in half. According to the quote, the southern states in the Union, Sonora, Lapponia, Maletia, Granada, and Natal, were given independence under the name of the Meridian Confederation. Although this new nation was technically independent, it was also still a vassal of the original PAU, which itself was still centered around Portola and contained all of the northern states. The next day, on the 1st of July, the siege of Livonis and Berlin occurred when the Aragons attempted to attack Starum's capital, Livonis, while they were having a major meeting, possibly as retribution for the situation during the Icelandic Compromise. It was minorly successful, with the Aragons capturing a watchtower before being repulsed. According to the quote, the Starmiglians responded by sieging Berlin, the capital of Eriga, although their forces were much less organized and scattered around the city. Eventually, both sides returned to their own territories, with this situation not escalating anywhere. Following this, on the 3rd, the Madagascar incident occurred when an independent nation occupying Madagascar came into conflict with Starum's positions on the island. According to the quote, both Araga and Arabia supported the independent Madagascar, and eventually the PAU responded to the conflict by recognizing their claim to the island as well. However, war was eventually averted when the Malagasy moved to the islands of Reunion and Mauritius, abandoning Madagascar to the control of Starum. And here we have 2 additional events from June 3rd to the 6th, 2017, during Earthworld 6. On the 3rd, Starum launched 2 end expeditions. According to the quote, they were led by Mitch and FedEx, respectively, with Mitch's expedition being particularly successful, looting a total of 15 end cities in 3 hours. Then, on the 4th, the Fayu crisis occurred when Fayu, a prominent member of the PAU, stole several items from Starum. Starmiglian forces moved into Portola, where Fayu was publicly executed for the crime. However, after he didn't respawn in Portola, instead respawning somewhere else in the world, Starum refused to remove their army from Portola, thus occupying it. According to the quote, there was a brief period of official war before both sides agreed to label Fayu an international terrorist and track him down. It's not stated if Fayu was ever found and punished for his crimes, but this does mark the end of this week in 2017. Next up, we have a single event from May 31st, 2020 in Solus World 2, when the world was closed down for good. Here's the quote, which would represent Solus's leaving of the host position and also leaving of the server, unfortunately. However, we do have many more events for this week in 2020, as the Hawaii world was being hosted by Vegetable and had just begun. On the 31st, a Dyn map poll was held to decide whether the Dyn map should show the nether and end dimensions or not. According to the quote, the people voted to show the dimensions with a strong majority in favor of that option. Also on the 31st, several more nations were formed. Here's the full list, which includes the Banana Republic of Jungle Japes, Asangar, Britannia, Penn, the Caliano Islands, the Free City of Crateria, New Zanzibar, Mount Orca, Triangle, the Free City of Orkilla, Kailua, and Huronland. A day later, on the 1st, it was the first time a nation was disbanded when Mount Orca was disbanded voluntarily. Here's the quote for that. And next, on the 3rd, it was the first day no land claim changes were made, with no new nations, no disbanding, and no adjustments to a claim for any nation on the map. Here's the quote. But that marks the end of this week in 2020. And next up, we have a couple of events from May 31st to June 6th, 2022, during Earthworld Redux. First, on the 31st, Kirsch was founded. You may remember this name from Solus World 2. The guy who made that one decided to remake it in this world. Here's the quote. It was roughly in the same location again, Central Chile, South America. Next, on the 1st, Lemnos was partitioned between their neighbors Cyprus and Lesbos. Here's the quote. Following this, on the next day, the Mississippian-Lesbian War occurred when the nation of Mississippi declared war on the small nation of Lesbos. Due to the unwinnable situation, the Lesbian army mostly turned to looting and destruction. According to the quote, the Mississippian army quickly invaded, completely destroyed the island, and forced Lesbos to capitulate. They received some small islands in the peace treaty, and the nation was disbanded. And finally, for the last event in 2022, on the 6th, Canaan Takir annexed their neighbor Palestine. Here's the quote. It doesn't really say if this was controversial or impactful or not, but it was listed on the world history, so it probably was relevant at the time. And finally, for the last slide, we have 3 events from May 31st to June 6th, 2025, last year during Brave New World Revisited. First, on the 31st, Brave New World Revisited was announced as a return to the Brave New World map used in 2022. According to the quote, staff went through and artificially ruined many of the cities built previously to make the map more interesting. Later in the week, on the 5th, land claims for the world were opened, although only for settlements, not for nations, meaning you couldn't join together in factions yet, although you could claim where you were going to build. Here's the quote. And the next day, on the 6th, the world officially opened with a handful of players joining the server to start building their settlements. Here's the quote. But that marks the beginning of Brave New World Visited, and this marks the end of the video. Thank you for watching. Remember to like, subscribe, and check out the server at the link in the description. As always, if you have any additional information about any of these events, leave a comment down below, or go ahead and add it to the Mappercraft wiki. See you next week for June 7th to the 13th, hopefully on time.